Hello, YouTube and viewers of my channel. Thank you for clicking on my video. Today's discussion, rather, is going to be on how to exist. Because life doesn't really give you a manual. You kind of just have to go out there and find a way to exist. Though more specifically in this video, I'm going to be talking and referencing a philosopher of the past named Kierkegaard. And he actually helped find how to exist, or at least a pathway for people who almost are in like existential crises. He actually wrote a narrative, almost like a story, about how to exist. And that is specifically what we're going to talk about. So if you would like to be a part of this discussion and just, be here, then please tag along, for the rest of the video. And if not, well then you can politely bye-bye. Though I can guarantee you that if you stay, you will probably find some profound insights that will maybe even surprise you. So I have a notebook in front of me, multiple pages of writings. And in those pages, I pretty much just kind of noted down like the story of Kierkegaard in this, let's say, bout of knowing how to exist. And he plays it through two characters. The first character is, they call the aesthetic man. And the second character, the other guy, is the ethical man. And essentially, he plays the existential crises out with these people that exist in a real and actual polarity. And this almost resembles like any, one given person selected out of, let's say, the town. And I mean, the essence of it and the reason why he did this, I think, well, more or less debated, is because I've written here, staying in one realm is a prison of its own destruction, lacking the full dynamics that life can offer. And I mean, that's true, and we will see even more so how that is played out with even more of the notes that I have here for us to read. So just stay tuned. I think the best way to move forward is to actually just straight up read word for word what I wrote. I do this in another video, but I think it's more almost beneficial for us to like diverge into the writing, just so you can almost get kind of like an idea. Though brief precept, there's a middle ground between the aesthetic man and the ethical man, which makes, let's say, a blend between the two. And that is arguably the way forward. But here, I will read, and then we'll see the kind of like the play out of this. And I read, a middle path brings forward both ways of interpreting life. Though having both ways of guiding forces creates a tension of existence which will remain in a man. This is because, still, there cannot be absolute certainty in how life will play out. Irrational faith can choke you just as much as the unlimited paths a faithless man could walk on. Seeing that a faithless man does have unlimited paths, and faith directed almost without boundaries is like limiting in and of itself. It's a strange conundrum you put yourself in when you walk on the middle path. Though, allow me to continue reading, because I feel the reading almost provides even more context than our observation of the words. And my observations, they could be better. But regardless, we are here reading, and we are exploring the topic instead of being perfect, right? So allow me to read a bit more here. I'm just going to be diverting my gaze down. But it says here, and I say here, No cult will provide an anesthetic for coping with the dynamics of the ever changing metaphysical phenomenons that make up the earth we live in. This way has no escape or solid foundation upon how to live. Rather, one finds their own path by living through life's uncertainty. I don't think this means we love chaos and inherit anarchy, but that there's a remembrance that navigating life is always a delicate balance between dancing between the light and the dark. Let's pause there just for a second. If I can pause. So I'd like to take it back to almost the beginning. Let's just go full circle again from where we started. In the introduction, I talked about the aesthetic man and the ethical man. And now we have the middle path. And the middle path highlights just what we said. There's no like really one path to walk on. It's almost walking through uncertainty. Though what we said in the beginning is like, well, the faithless man, let's say the ascetic, he's just walking down the infinite creativity of life, not necessarily regarding a god. Sounds right, think ascetic man, you can even put it in the context of today's day and age. Excuse me. Think about now the ethical man. The ethical man is one who obviously regards morals and virtues very highly, almost too much so, almost too orderly, like too stuck up, perhaps. Maybe so rigid in his faith, he doesn't even allow life to happen, but it's still a way to deal with life instead of, not dealing with it at all. And it almost has structure, so it seems appealing, right? So you got the ethical man, maybe too rigid, too stuck, and he got the aesthetic man, who's maybe too loose almost. It doesn't believe in anything, almost casually living through his infinite ways of perhaps what the ethical man would see as hedonism. But yet, these are only two people who live within a community, and they're saying, "Oh no, this is the way to live." And the other guy's like, "Oh no, this is the way to live." But, take a breath. We have a middle path. We have a man in the middle. I don't know whether this is Kierkegaard himself or maybe the abstraction of the times in which he is presenting to the world, which is probably the groundbreaking philosophy of someone living in the middle. When you live in the middle, you don't dance between needing aesthetics or even needing ethics. It's almost as if the man has consumed both and is both, yet he still dances with the uncertainty all at the same time. You could almost equate the man to a tornado to the regular townfolk because he doesn't actually necessarily regard anything in any, tightly gripped manner. You can see this from a spiritual perspective, perhaps, because there's spiritual practices nowadays, and I'm not going to call it any religion in particular, but people do walk middle paths, they walk within almost borders, So speaking from the context now, bringing it back to just the Kierkegaard, the person who walks the middle path adopts a way of living that helps deal with life in a way that gives life the flexibility to work within anybody's existential crisis. That was a lot. That was a lot. But allow me to pause and maybe I'll say that in a better way. Instead of trying to almost perfect what I was going to say, let me move on to something a bit more different. Or maybe more on the same caliber, but existence essentially stems from your knowing of who you are. I have it on the page right here. Getting lost means drifting from your knowing of who you are. A man who understands himself, or even a woman, because I'm not going to say, anybody could be watching. Knowing yourself and losing yourself are just acts in which we ultimately find ourselves in the world. To appeal to any one way is almost control over the world. It's like, I have to be aesthetic, I have to be ethical. It's almost desire and ego at that point, or stubbornness, whatever your vice is, or whatever you have a tendency to be that keeps you limited in that certain existential crisis. And more times than not, we like to project our existential crises out on other people. And that brings sometimes conformity, sometimes fear, straight up fear, not conforming fear, but almost like just like what, And we find ourselves at juxtaposition with each other, with other people of society and the members of the community. And especially for like people who are like in Gen Z, like younger generations, we also have like, we find ourselves in weird positions where it's like, whoa, how do I exist? I now have to look up a video on YouTube on how to exist, because no one directly tells you, well, how to exist, because everybody's pushing out the reasons why they feel like they can't exist. Like their crisis is out on other people. It almost becomes like an unconscious projection. And yet, existence in itself requires uncertainty. It requires you to be in a state sometimes of crisis and then of figuring it out. And that's why I like these two first sentences in this writing. And I'll read the whole paragraph just so we have some context now. But the first two sentences, I'll say it again. Existence stems from knowing who you are. Getting lost means drifting from knowing who you are. Learning more about the world has the same effect. The truth is that it'll never be easy to know all of the world without a crisis of information. Lost in the possibilities, one could say. Existence does not have to have too much knowing around it. Being yourself does not. You try to act the same way about existence, and suddenly you do not need so much things. You need to know about so many things. You let go almost. Let's pause. When you let go, you essentially come in transcendence. When you let go of your own crisis, you almost deny its existence, which is kind of funny. You're denying the existence of your own existential crisis. And then you become a human being who then operates within the flow of the universe, or a flow of your own problems, let's say. And almost in that regard, you dance with uncertainty. And almost in that regard, that's what Kierkegaard is trying to get across anyways, is understanding how to dance with your own uncertainty as a pathway, a medium for finding out who you are. Sorry, I hit pause and I didn't mean to hit pause then. That was a really good moment, let's say statement. But letting go in this way becomes, I would say, arguably the pathway forward through life's crisis. And that's really, I can't say anything more, It's like, then at that point, it's almost like, how do you prefer to let go of your need to know how your life's going to turn out? And that can be done in so many different ways. For me, I just like to drift, like literally just go out in a field and like drift. Maybe a park, just drift. Literally just doze off into nothingness. And then at some point, I just kind of like gain a sense of self again. And I'm like, whoa. I suppose everything will be fine, because then I just kind of like gain my almost existence back, life back, momentum back. I don't know. It finds me. Though maybe you've been so deep in a black hole, and you've woven yourself so many neuroses. Perhaps you have to let go continually. Like you have to make a practice. Been there. Trust me, I've been there. And at that point, like, okay, well, perhaps meditation, perhaps guided meditations, because doing meditations yourself sometimes boring. So guided. Maybe you actually have to set up a routines and you actually have to wake up when your alarm goes off. It's like, not to discipline yourself, but just to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna have a routine of now letting go. So like you get up, you do your letting go procedure. Maybe you're trying too hard to begin with. Maybe you just need to let go all in order, like you really have to judge on what and maybe meditate literally on the idea of what letting go seems to be for you. Letting go of your need to control life in like a certain way. Letting go of needing to be like ethical, or letting go of needing to be, aesthetic. You almost want to let go of being the middle path, but I think it's so much more better to at least be the middleman in this regard when it comes to the crisis, because then you kind of adopt everything, and like that's arguably better than sticking to one side perfectly. But yeah, and still just practice being or doing the letting of the go, and then that becomes the antidote to your crisis. That fact, perhaps, I feel like is what Kierkegaard was really trying to get to with this writing. Because we can read more, but I mean, I'm looking at the writing and it's just like the whole reason why he wrote the story was to illustrate how that you always need to dance with the uncertainty of life. You're never truly going to know who you're going to be. I think I have a video where I haven't posted it yet where it's like you always have to choose who you're going to be. You always have to choose your embodiment. So like choose, like I can't even talk anymore. It's like you got to choose. And then once you choose, like that's it. Choose to be that millionaire. Maybe you won't become the millionaire, but you'll feel like one. Maybe choose to be the person who's happy and then you become the happy. Just like choose, make the act. Don't just dream. You always hear that. Don't just dream about who you're going to become, take actions on it. Well, that's true. Like you have to. And once you do, you become it. And then it's so much more easier to take actions because you already are it. It's like, oh yeah, today I'll just do, this. I'll be fine, because I say that jokingly because at that point, you are the embodiment. It's like you are the one who you say you want to be. And then life becomes just that, just becoming, an always endless, becoming. And how you become becomes more beautiful or almost elegant each day because you create that elegance in your steps, in your life, with your actions, almost how you breathe, how you interact with the world, with nature, like everything. Like your world opens up when you break almost your own internal need and desire to be ethical or aesthetic, like when you break these limiting, almost, let's say, beliefs. And yeah, just sit with that, really sit with that, and really ask yourself, what can you do now? I hope I gave you a good example, a good little tidbit for you to go off of, to kind of like come closer to that conclusion, that breakthrough, perhaps. We could call it awakening, but I could just say, like your inevitable, kind of realization, which everyone has at some point, It's just kind of like life. But I hope that like I can maybe be a catalyst for that, maybe fast forward it for you to have your own, breakthrough, because I want that for you, viewer, for anyone really, because it's a beautiful thing, and you start actually getting to live life. And I know what it's like to be trapped by life. So if I were to give you any, let's say, clearness in your path, then I would have done my job in making this video to begin with. And that's all I can really do. Yeah, I could be thankful for that almost. because I would be happy then. So, all in all, I mean, thank you for listening and tuning in to this conversation, this discussion on uncertainty, on how to live life. Literally, how to live life. But without further ado, I'm just going to sign off. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you. I'll see you at some point. I have more videos. Feel free to check them out, please. But whether you do or not, it doesn't matter. See you.